Hello everyone. So as promised, I'm gonna actually solve the Excel part of the review set for exam number 1. So we're gonna go question by question. So now I'm gonna actually go ahead and do question number 1. So for each question we have a corresponding sheet on Excel file. So the answer to each question will have to be on the same sheet. So when grading, I'm just gonna be looking at the corresponding sheet to each question. So for question number 1, it's a descriptive statistic question. So it has three bullets. So in the first bullet, it asks us to do a numerical summary. And then in the second one, we need to do a frequency distribution, basically a histogram table or frequency table with frequency itself, relative frequency, and cumulative frequency. And then in the last part, we do we have to give a graph, histogram graph, for same actually table. So I'm gonna start off with the first part, numerical summary. So we need to include mean, median. So let me just copy these. Alright, it's not gonna work. Let me just go to my Excel file. So let me zoom a little bit. So we have a table of 40 observations, 40 data samples. Now, for those actually descriptive statistic measures, I can go ahead and use, for some of them actually, if I use descriptive statistic tool, this tool actually will do everything. I mean, it's gonna give us some of these measures, but the problem with this one is that it actually gives mean, median, all those things, column by column. So if you want to use this tool, you have to make sure that all the data actually is in one column. So you cannot give this whole table to this tool and expect it to give mean for the whole table. It's going to give you the mean for each column, mean for the first column, mean for the second, mean the third, mean for the last one. So instead, I'm gonna actually go ahead and not use this one, and I'm gonna use the formulas. So mean, median, mode. So it said look for two mode. Sorry. Mean, median, mode, variance, standard deviation, range, and range actually needs to find mean and max, coefficient of variation, and 35th percentile. So let me just show you the formula that I'm going to use. Okay, so for the first bullet, mean, the function that we use is average of my sample. Median itself, median function. Mode, so since we're gonna actually look for two modes, it's gonna be, we're gonna use mode.multiple. So it's gonna be an array function. So I actually select both those at once and then start typing equal mode.multiple of my table. And then when I'm done typing, instead of pressing enter, I press Ctrl Shift Enter. So this basically tells me that there is only one mode, which is 16. So even if you try multiple modes, it's going to give you only one. Variance, var.s, variance, and S stands for sample. So we have two options, var.s or p. So since this is a sample, we just take var.s and then data set. Standard deviation is going to be stdev. Again, we have stdev.p and s. This is a sample. We take stdev.s and then the table. Min function, minimum of a data array, and then max range would be max minus min. Coefficient of variation, the formula, if you look at the, it should be in the formula sheet. Coefficient of variance is variance divided by, so sample variance, sample standard deviation divided by sample mean. So that's what we want to do. So it's going to be equal standard deviation, sample standard deviation divided by sample mean. Percentile function would be percentile.exclusive, and it asks for two inputs, array and the number of percentile. So array would be my table, the whole table, comma, and then the k number. It's basically, we showed it using p percentile, so it's the same thing. It's going to be a number between 0 and 1, so it's going to be 0.35. So now I've done actually bullet number 1 of first question. In the second bullet, it asks actually for constructing the frequency distribution, frequency, relative frequency, and cumulative frequency. Frequency itself, the actual frequency of different bins. Excel tool, the data analysis tool, histogram tool basically, will give us this frequency table and also the histogram. So I'm gonna actually go back to my sheet, but before actually going there, I need to make sure that I have 5 bins. So the first step is to develop the bins, to build the bins. So I need to go back to my data and check the range. So the range actually, the data actually is from 12 to 26. So from 12 to 26, let me just write it here. So the data actually goes from 12 to 26, and I want to have 5 bins, right? 5 bins. So the range would be, so the bin width would be 26 minus 12, my range divided by 5, which would be 14 divided by 5 is 2.8. So you can actually go ahead and use 2.8. If you want to use 2.8, then your bins would be 12 plus 2.8 would be 14.8, and then the next bin would be 14.8 divided plus 2.8 would be 17.6, and then 17.6 plus 2.8 would be 20.4, then 20.4 plus 2.8 would be 23.2, and then 23.2 plus 2.8 would be 26. So I have 5 bins. But when you're dealing with Excel, Excel only needs the upper limit of each bin. So these are the numbers that you should put in your Excel file. So if I go back to my Excel file, let me just bins. That's okay. My bins are the upper limit of each bin. So 14.8, 17.6, 20.4, 23.2, 26.0. Or you could actually, since these numbers all are whole numbers, you could actually use, instead of 2.8, you could actually use 3. And then if you use 3 and you, since you actually are taking the whole numbers, your bins would be 12 up to anything below 15, which would be, the last number would be 14, and then the next one would be 15 to anything below 18, 18 to anything below 21, to anything below 21, which would be 20, and then 21 to 23, 24, to anything below 27, which the last one would be 26. So this would be a this would be a second alternative if you would like to use. But I'm gonna actually stick to the first one. I'm gonna use this one, for now. But it's gonna give you, it's the same idea. There is no right or wrong answer here. As long as you have 5 equal bins, it's fine. So the next step, let me just maximize this. So the next step would be to go ahead and use data analysis Toolpak. So if you go to data tab, data analysis, sometimes you don't have the data analysis and you have to add it. If you want to add this data analysis Toolpak, you need to go to File, Options, Add-ins, and then here go, Manage Excel Add-ins, go, and then check the Analysis Toolpak. Okay. That's for Windows. If you have Mac, it's a little bit different. You have to go to Tool, and then Excel Add-in. But anyway, we have it here, data analysis. So the tool that I'm going to be using is going to be histogram. So input range would be my table. Bin range is going to be my bins that I actually created. So there's no label here, and I'm going to put everything in the same sheet. So output range would be here, and I would like to see a chart output, which actually is the answer to the third part of the first question, create a histogram using the same. So I need to actually do a chart output, and that would be it. Okay, so we have this nice looking histogram. If you would like to add this last bin, so you just select both of them, right click on it, delete, and then okay. So see, so this is the answer to the third part of the question, but we're not done with the second part yet, because the second part of the first question asks for frequency, which we have it here. If you look here, bins frequency, we have it here. But we also need to have the relative frequency and cumulative frequency. So I'm going to add 2 more columns here, relative frequency and cumulative frequency. Just to make sure that the table looks good, I'm going to copy the format of this one, and I'm going to paste it here so that these 2 columns are with the same format. So relative frequency, the definition of relative frequency relative frequency frequency for each bin would be actual frequency of each bin divided by total frequency. So let me go back to my Excel file. Relative frequency. So first I need to calculate the total frequency. Total frequency would be the sum of frequencies, or basically the number of observations that I have in my sample, so I have 14. Let me just highlight it so that I know that this doesn't belong to the table. So relative frequency would be 2 divided by 40, right? 2 divided by 40, and I need to fix 40 by pressing F4 or Command T, because I want to drag this formula down. So now I have relative frequency, and the sum of relative frequencies should be equal to 1. If you drag one more, the sum should be equal to 1. Cumulative frequency. Cumulative frequency would be the frequency or the number of observations that are less than the upper limit of each bin. So for this one, we have two numbers that are below 14.8. So the answer here would be 2. And then for the second one would be 2 plus 8, because so we have 8 numbers that are between 17.6 and 14.8, so 8 numbers between that, and then 2 numbers below 14.8. So in total we will have 8 plus 2 observations that are less than 17.6, this number. And then if you want to drag this down, you have to write a formula like this: sum of this all the way to this, and then you have to fix the first one. Now you can actually drag it down. You can also drag it up. It should give you the same formula. So it basically gives you, so if you click here, sum of C15 to C15, which basically is sum of C15. Second one, sum of C15 to C16, so the sum of 2 and 8. The third one, sum of C15 all the way to C17, so C15, C16, C17. Sum of anything, the frequency of each bin plus the frequency of any previous bin, any bins that is smaller than the actual, the current bin that we're looking at. So if you do that, the last bin should have a cumulative frequency of equal to the total, 14, 14. These two should be the same.